Welcome to today's episode of Pharma Newsroom, your easy insights into all the biggest pharma companies in the world. We thank today's sponsor, Pharma AI Academy, your education partner for pharma.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping right into a really interesting comparison. Eli Lilly versus Novo Nordisk, two giants, head-to-head.
Yep, we've got their first quarter 2025 financials here, ending March 31st.
And our goal is basically to unpack these reports, pull out the key bits for, someone looking at this from an investment angle.
Yeah.
Comparing how they did, where they might be heading.
Exactly. It's a snapshot, but a really revealing one, especially with everything happening in their main markets.
Right. And just the standard heads up. This is purely informational, definitely not financial advice. Always do your own homework.
Always. Okay, where should we start? Lilly.
Yeah, let's kick off with Lilly. Q1 2025. The big headline number seems to be revenue up 45% to $12.73 billion. That's a big jump.
It really is. And the main engine behind that seems to be volume growth. Specifically, Mounjaro and Zepbound are just flying off the shelves, apparently.
Mounjaro, that's the diabetes one, right? How did it do specifically?
Huge. Revenue up 113%, hitting $3.84 billion. Strong growth in the U.S., about 75%, but also picking up steam internationally.
Wow, okay. And Zepbound, the obesity treatment.
That one also had a massive quarter, pulled in $2.31 billion, and that's just U.S. revenue. It really shows the demand, the unmet need there.
Absolutely. Anything else driving growth for Lilly?
Well, Verzenio, their oncology drug, also saw a decent bump, up 10% globally to $1.16 billion. So not just GLP-1s, though they are clearly the stars right now.
Right, provides a bit of balance. So top line looks great. How about profitability? How's that translating?
Profitability's up too. Reported EPS increased 23% to $3.06. Non-GAAP was up 29% to $3.34.
Okay, solid numbers.
But, and this is important for you, the listener, to understand, both those EPS figures include a pretty hefty charge for acquired IP/R&D, in-process research and development.
Right, how much was that?
It was $1.72 per share. Significant. Specifically, they mentioned $1.57 billion related to acquiring a program from Scorpion Therapeutics, a PI3K inhibitor.
So they're buying pipeline assets. That impacts current earnings, but it's an investment in the future. How does that affect their guidance?
Good question. They actually kept their full-year revenue guidance the same $58 to $61 billion range. But because of those IP/R&D charges and also some losses on investments, they did lower their EPS guidance for the year on both a reported and non-GAAP basis.
Okay, so that makes sense. Investing now, lower current EPS forecast, but maybe a higher future potential. What else are we seeing on the future front? Pipeline news.
Yeah, the pipeline looks active. They highlighted positive phase 3 results for orforglipron. That's their oral GLP-1 agonist for type 2 diabetes.
Oral GLP-1, that's a big deal.
Huge potential. And they said this is just the first of 7 phase 3 trials they have planned for it in obesity and diabetes. So they're really pushing hard on the oral front.
Definitely one to watch. Anything else notable in the pipeline?
A few things. They got a positive recommendation in the EU for Jaypirca in a specific type of leukemia, CLL, progress with lipidosiran for the protein, baricitinib for alopecia, EVGL-YSS for atopic dermatitis, Omva for Crohn's. So yeah, moving forward on multiple fronts beyond GLP-1s.
Okay. And to make all these drugs, especially the blockbusters, they need manufacturing capacity. Any news there?
Big news, actually. They're planning to more than double their U.S. manufacturing investment since 2020, spending over $50 billion. That's a massive commitment.
Wow. Okay, clearly signaling they expect demand to stay incredibly high.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears then. Novo Nordisk. How did their Q1 shape up?
Also very strong. Remember, their numbers are in Danish kroner, so DKK. Sales were up 19% in kroner, which is about 18% if you adjust for currency fluctuations, hitting DKK 78.1 billion.
And operating profit?
Even better growth there, up 22% in kroner or 20% at constant exchange rates to DKK 38.8 billion. So, like Lilly, they're riding a wave of high demand.
What were their main growth areas? Similar story.
Very similar. Diabetes and obesity care sales together jumped 21%, but the real standout was obesity care itself up a massive 67%.
67%. Driven mainly by Wegovy, I assume.
Exactly. Wegovy sales shot up 85%, reaching DKK 17.36 billion. Interestingly, their older obesity drug, Saxendi, saw sales decline. People are clearly switching to the newer option.
Makes sense. And their big diabetes drug, Ozempic, still growing.
Still growing strong. Ozempic sales increased 18% to DKK, $32.72 billion. Rybelsus, their oral GLP-1 for diabetes, also grew. So that whole GLP-1 franchise is just, incredibly powerful for them.
And like Lilly, they're pushing pipeline development, right? Especially in obesity.
Absolutely. They have Cagrilema, that's a combination drug, which showed really strong weight loss, 15.7% in a trial called Redefine 2. They're planning to file for approval in early 2026.
Another potential blockbuster down the line. What about oral options for obesity?
They're on it. They've submitted oral semaglutide, a 25 milligram dose specifically for obesity, to the FDA for review. That directly targets Lilly's orforglipron development.
The oral race is definitely heating up. Anything else from Novo's pipeline?
Yes, they're looking beyond just weight loss and diabetes. They submitted semaglutide 2.4 milligrams, the Wegovy dose, for treating MSH. That's the liver disease, metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis. They've filed in the EU and the US, and the FDA granted it priority review.
Expanding the use cases for semaglutide. Interesting. But despite all this growth, didn't Novo Nordisk adjust their outlook downwards?
They did, yes. They lowered their full-year outlook for growth in both sales and operating profit, calculated at constant exchange rates.
Why was that? What's putting pressure on them?
The main reason they cited was lower than expected uptake of their branded GLP-1s in the U.S. market. And they specifically pointed the finger at compounded GLP-1s.
Ah, the compounding issue. So pharmacies making their own versions, that's hitting their U.S. sales.
Apparently so. It seems to be a significant enough factor for them to revise their guidance. They mentioned focusing on preventing, quote, unlawful compounding and expanding access to the real deal. It's a specific headwind for them right now, especially in the U.S.
That's a key difference compared to what we heard from Lilly. Did Novo mention any specific targets despite this?
They did. They have a strategic goal to hit over DKK $25 billion in obesity care sales for the full year. Given they already booked DKK $18.4 billion in Q1, well, they're well on their way, even with the U.S. challenges.
Okay, let's put them side by side then. From an investor's view, looking at Q1, what are the main contrasts?
Both are growing fast, obviously, but Lilly's growth seems maybe more concentrated in the U.S. right now, really powered by Mounjaro and Zepbound's steep ramp up. Novo has strong growth too, but maybe a bit more spread out internationally, and they've been in the obesity game longer with Wegovy.
And Novo actually put a number on their market share, didn't they?
They did. They claim to be the global leader in branded obesity care volume share at 68.7%. Lilly didn't provide a comparable number in their report.
So Wegovy has the established lead, but Zepbound is coming on strong, especially in the U.S.
Exactly. It's shaping up to be a fierce battle, but honestly, the market is so big, there's likely room for both to do extremely well.
And the fight isn't just injectables. The oral GLP-1s are a key battleground.
Absolutely critical. Lilly's pushing orforglipron through phase 3. Novo's already got Rybelsus for diabetes and is aiming to get oral semaglutide approved for obesity soon. Whoever nails the oral market could gain a significant edge in convenience and access.
Beyond GLP-1s, how do their pipelines stack up for diversification?
Both are diversifying. Lilly has a strong presence in pipeline in oncology and immunology. Novo was pushing into MSH, as we said, and also has its rare disease segment, though growth there was slower this quarter. So, as an investor, you look at the potential in those other areas too.
And practically speaking, making enough of these drugs is crucial, manufacturing.
Yeah, that's a big factor. Novo mentioned facing periodic supply constraints. Lilly, as we noted, is pouring massive amounts, like $50 billion plus, into U.S. manufacturing capacity to avoid that. That difference in supply situation could be important.
Okay, last point on comparison, the outlook revisions. Lilly's was due to R&D investments. Novo's due to U.S. compounding issues.
Right. Tells you about their immediate pressures. Novo's facing a market dynamic issue, specifically in the U.S. Lilly's is more about a strategic choice impacting near-term EPS for long-term gain. It's also worth noting Novo mentioned a slight dip in their global diabetes value share.
But fundamentally, both are still highly profitable.
Oh, yeah. Gross margins are excellent for both. Lilly at 82.5% reported, Novo slightly higher at 83.5%. The underlying business is very healthy.
So wrapping this up, what are the core takeaways for you, the listener, looking at these two from an investment angle after Q1?
Okay, takeaway 1. The GLP-1 market for diabetes and obesity is just a monster growth engine for both. That's clear.
2.
Competition, especially in U.S. obesity, is getting really intense. And the compounding issue is a specific, maybe short to medium term, headache for Novo Nordisk in the U.S.
3. Watch the oral drugs. That's going to be a huge competitive front.
Definitely. 4. Manufacturing isn't glamorous, but capacity and supply chain are absolutely vital. Keep an eye on who manages that best.
And finally,
Look at the whole picture. Consider their different geographic strength, how diversified their pipelines are beyond the GLP-1s. They aren't identical companies, even if they compete fiercely in some areas.
that was a great deep dive, really pulling apart those Q1 results. And just one last time, this analysis is for informational purposes. It's not investment advice. Please do your own research. Talk to a financial professional.
And hey, if you found this breakdown useful, we'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to Pharma A Academy over on YouTube. We do more deep dives like this, plus AI training specifically for people working in the pharma industry. Subscribing helps us out a lot.
Absolutely. Okay, final thought to leave you with. We see this incredible race in GLP-1s. What comes next? What's the next big breakthrough, maybe even beyond GLP-1s, that could completely reshape how we treat metabolic diseases? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.